We're live on Facebook Live. Welcome to Don Valley West to everyone. My name is Rob Oliphant, Member of Parliament for Don Valley West, and it is really a privilege and an honor to be with all of you, but particularly with my friend and colleague, Ryan Turnbull, who is the MP for Whitby, and also the Parliamentary Secretary to the Minister of Finance and National Revenue. So this is a town hall that we're going to be having to talk a little bit about the budget. People will know that we changed the timing of the budget, that our Prime Minister decided that I think it's something he's always wanted to do, and it now makes more sense because the fiscal year starts in April, and so we have a budget that's introduced late in the fall. We have some debate and discussion about the budget, give some time to prepare. We wrap up the fiscal year March 31st and begin a new fiscal year on April 1st. And I think it's a great change that we actually had a little bit of a rushed time to get the consultations done the first time, but over the next year, we'll be into another budget next fall, preparing for 27, 27. 28. So this budget has been particularly challenged for the Minister of Finance, Francois-Philippe Champagne, and his team, including Ryan, because we have much uncertainty. You don't have to be a rocket scientist to understand that our world is in flux, it's in turmoil, and our economy in Canada obviously is under great stress, if not threat. The rules-based international order, and that's the thing that keeps the world going, where we have predictability and understandability, is something that has been challenged, particularly by the current U.S. government. And our prosperity then is also challenged. And so things are being reshaped, and companies are worried. Some are hurting, but more are worried about the future. Individuals are worried about their livelihoods. We have a cost of living and affordability issue that has gone on all around the world, but Canada's not immune to that. And we've had disruption and upheaval due to wars and still coming out of COVID. So these are challenging financial times that people feel. So what Mark Carney, as our Prime Minister, said was, we can't control everything, but the budget should look at the things we can control and how we live together well, maintaining the fabric of Canadian society and the social programs we all both need and deserve, which define us and our sovereignty as Canadian, but also making sure that we're innovating and creating. So we need to go faster than we've ever gone before. Government moves slowly. Prime Minister Carney moves quickly. And so we are doing unprecedented changes to go bigger and faster and to build a strong one single economy in Canada. Choices have to be made. And so in the budget, people that have contacted me already in the office have noted that some things are gone, but not as many as maybe people would have thought, because we're tightening spending and focusing on investing. And we're trying to make investments which we've been calling generational investments, meaning these are 20 to 40 years. We need to invest now, spend less, invest more, so that kids, grandchildren, great-grandchildren will have prosperity. We're also doing a Made in Canada budget, as well as making sure that we build Canada strong while building the Canadian economy at the same time. So there we are in Don Valley West. Most of you will know that we have many people who need jobs and many people who create jobs. We have a very wealthy riding, and we have pockets of people really struggling to get by every month. When I thought about doing this town hall, the first person obviously I thought of was Ryan Turnbull to come and join us. Ryan was elected in 2019. He's had 3 elections now under his belt. He is Parliamentary Secretary, as I said, to the Minister of Finance and National Revenue. He had been, at one point, the Parliamentary Secretary around industry, innovation, science, and industry. He is a social innovator, entrepreneur, thinker, and and connector. When I think of Ryan Turnbull, I think of a connector, someone who understands you connect government, big business, small business, entrepreneurs, citizens, consumers, NGOs together. You put those people in a room and good things happen. So that's what Ryan has been doing since he began as an MP in 2019. And he is now charged with helping shape Canada's budget, but also moving us into the next 10 or 20 years. He's a lot younger than I am, so he's got way more at stake than I do. I may be now looking at how I make sure the old age security and Canada pension are protected. He's actually making sure we protect the Canada child benefit, having a young family that is growing by the minute. So we come at this intergenerationally ourselves, recognizing that Canada and Canadians are in this together. And whether you're a newcomer, many in the riding are, or whether you're a long-time settled family that's been here for generations, we're in this together. So, Ryan, over to you to give us a little bit of a high-level overview of what this budget 2026 is about, and then we're going to get into some of that nitty-gritty of it.
Yeah, Rob, thanks for that opening introduction. You can tell that you're really well, both in touch with your writing, and you painted the brush perfectly in terms of setting the context for this conversation. And I want to say thank you to you. I know we share an office on the 12th floor in Valor over in Parliament Hill, and I've learned a lot from you in my short time in Parliament. I know you have lots of experience, and I've benefited from your wisdom quite a lot. So it's great to be here with you. Thanks for choosing to invite me to join you for this conversation, and great to hopefully see lots of people joining in online for this conversation. I was excited to participate in the formulation of Budget 2025, and I got to do some of the pre-budget consultation over the summer. Rob rightfully points out that we've changed the budget cycle, which I think is a positive thing. There's many countries in the world that also do budgets like we've done, which is in the fall, and we'll now have a spring economic update in the future. And but I think the one thing that often I think of when I think of that change is the construction season, and the fact that provincial and municipal governments tend to have a budget cycle which they're looking for the leadership of the federal government to sort of signal and give direction as to where we're going. And they can often align or even stack some of the benefits when you think of tax breaks and other kinds of incentives and programs, and kind of align with the direction of the federal government. And in many cases, we are aligned. We're not always aligned with other levels of government, but in many cases, a lot of the tough issues that we're trying to address really need alignment between levels of government to make progress, as well as many other stakeholders. And so I think that budget cycle change is actually pretty significant. I know the Minister of Finance in Saskatchewan was very, very excited to hear about that change, and was likely going to follow suit in terms of changing their budget cycle. So it's interesting to see how the federal government impacts others. But I think, like, if I were to try and summarize why this budget is so important, I certainly think it responds to the context that we're in, the changing geopolitical landscape, as Rob said, the rules-based international order that has shifted dramatically since the U.S. administration changed. I think, and most people know this, but we've relied on the United States as a trading partner for a long time, and have deepened the integration between our economies. And I think this is Canada's moment to disentangle some of our supply chains, try to achieve a higher degree of self-reliance, sort of get out of the shadow of the U.S. economy, and really stand on our own 2 feet. And I think so. We've often talked about the budget internally as moving from reliance to resilience. and that's sort of the transition that this budget represents. And I think Rob said, and I think constituents of yours and mine and all across Canada have probably heard our central message, which is to build Canada strong. And we really think that Canada has what it takes to exceed expectations, punch well above our weight in terms of building a stronger economy. So that includes things like spending less on daily operations and investing more in our country's future. There's people who question, well, what does that really mean? I'm getting a bit of feedback on my end. I don't know if you're getting that on your end, Rob? No? Okay.
No,
Just checking. So spending less and investing more, what does that really mean? It means doing the hard look internally at government operations and saying within the fiscal room that the country has, which is relative to the size of our economy, to what degree should we be spending on government operations versus making investments that generate revenue and a return to the taxpayer? So I think what Prime Minister Carney has rightfully done is shifted our approach to governance from the previous administration that Rob and I both served under as well. But we were spending more. We saw a pretty dramatic rise in operational spending and not significant enough rise in capital spending. And I think that what we've seen Mark Carney do as Prime Minister is transition to reversing that. So we now have the inversion of that, which is less a declining operational spending to basically balance operational spending over the next 3 years with a focus on capital investment. We also released a capital budgeting framework, which is really significant in this budget, which really looks at how much capital investment is the government putting out there, and we'll be able to track what impact that's having on the economy. That's going to help grow the economy. It's going to help address the productivity challenges that have plagued our economy for quite some time. And I'm really excited about those investments. And the Minister of Finance referred to this budget as the investment budget. And it's interesting to think about budgets being sort of labeled, usually many years after the fact. When people look back, they sort of label budgets from the federal government, especially in times of crisis or hinge moments, and we hope that this one will be remembered as an investment budget.
Just before we go on there, let me poke a little bit on that first idea about spending less. I think that the one thing I heard maybe the most in the last few elections when I've knocked on the doors is people feeling that the government was spending too much. So in this budget, we're still going to be putting money into government expenses, but we're looking at two different ways of accounting for that money. Our operating budget, which is our daily expenditures, and much the way I run my own household. So we've got our, the groceries and the, transit and the entertainment, the various things I do. And then there's my mortgage payments, where I'm investing, or my investment in my TFSA, or my investment in my RSP. And so there's different kinds of spending. There's a spending that you put on your Visa bill. And what my understanding is that we are cutting down that spending. We're dropping our spending on those things so that we can maintain or even increase, particularly on some big projects, our investments in things which will generate the income so we can spend later. Am I getting that right?
Yeah, you're absolutely right, Rob. And it's a pretty sizable, like the government undertook a comprehensive expenditure review and committed to cutting basically 15% of operational spending over 3 years, which is significant. It's equivalent to $60 billion worth of quote unquote savings. That money, or that fiscal room, is still going to be spent, but now it's going to be invested in mobilizing private capital in the economy. It's going to be offering tax subsidies for capital investment, and we'll talk more about that later perhaps. but essentially there are tax breaks for for businesses to make capital investments in themselves. So to bet on themselves, to invest in, new equipment and machinery, to invest in protecting their IP and new research and development, et cetera, et cetera. So, the government is essentially creating fiscal room within a finite sort of allowable amount that we see that is reasonable within the fiscal framework to say, okay, instead of spending that on operations, if we reduce operations, eliminate some waste and duplication in government and achieve some efficiency without compromising services to Canadians, that we can actually use that room so that 15 or 20 billion dollars extra per year. It's actually about 20 billion per year if you average out 60 billion over 3 years. And you can then, do more things that stimulate the economy, invest in major projects. But all the ways in which we're doing that are strategic. So there are ways in which we can stimulate investment in the real economy. So, the investment tax credits, for example, the clean economy investment tax credits, they stimulate private investment in our economy. All of those activities will grow our economy and increase productivity. So it's a win-win. We're talking about moving from kind of a vicious cycle to a virtuous cycle of investment and growth, right? Where there's more tax revenue that's generated as a result of that too. So in future, our economy will grow, government will have more tax revenue because we're focused on capital investment. Oh, you're on mute now.
All right. I had thought I was muting, but we'll see. I did. Was the echo better for a while there, or was it the same?
It was the same. It got a little bit, yeah, I'm not sure why.
All right. Anyway, I will try to make sure that I'm muted everywhere. I don't know what that is. Anyway, we'll see. What I think we're doing is trying to balance the budget. I believe our commitment is to balance the budget by 28, 29. So trying to balance the operating budget by then. Am I correct on that?
Yeah, I think it's important to say it's balance the operating budget. It's not balancing the budget because that's a much longer time horizon for the situation we're in, which is one of, I think, significant strain, stress, uncertainty. And I think what we're doing is using our fiscal space, as the person that leads the International Monetary Fund has said, that both Germany and Canada have the stability and the fiscal room and space that they should be using that in a time of crisis like this to invest in their economy and grow the economy, because that's the only way that we're going to be able to weather the storm that we're in of this trade war, right? So to me, the major projects and the big infrastructure that we need to build in this country are going to help diversify our trade relationships, and they're needed because our trade routes and the infrastructure we have aren't able to necessarily accommodate the volume of new trade to new parts of the world if we don't make those investments. So in a way, the investments are necessary in order to be able to achieve the objectives that we've set out, which are all part of the context that we find ourselves in. We didn't choose the trade war, but we get to choose, how we react to it. And I think that you said that at the beginning, and that really is a fundamental sort of underlying assumption behind the budget, which is that we can only control what we can control in Canada. We can control what we build, who we trade with. We can control, how we create certainty and where the government invests. We can control our fiscal position and situation. So like we have control over many pieces of this, not everything. But those are essential aspects of Budget 2025.
And I'm not muted, am I? I'm okay now. And even that, the markets have still responded. So we still have our AAA credit rating. We are one of the two countries in the G7 that keep that rating. And that debt to GDP ratio that people talk about is still favorable. We're still have a strong, our GDP is strong, so we can carry that debt, which is like you can have a mortgage on your house if you have enough income to cover it. And so that I think Canadians need to hear that we are maintaining a good net debt to GDP ratio.
Yeah, if I could just to add to that, we have identified two fiscal anchors and a major objective, and Canada has the best net debt to GDP ratio in the G7. So we're at 13.3%. The closest other country to us is Germany at 48.7%. So they're not even close. Like Canada's debt to GDP ratio is the best by far in the G7. And our deficit to GDP ratio is also one of the best. The only one that's better is Japan. So essentially, and the International Monetary Fund, which monitors, they do a fiscal monitor and reports, and comparative analysis of, many countries in the global economy, and they look at the health of our economy, and they rate it extremely highly. We also rate very highly in terms of, preference for investment. So yes, you're right. We enjoy a AAA credit rating along with Germany, the only two countries in the G7, which means that our cost of capital to carry that debt is lower than it would be if we didn't have that credit rating. So yes, our debt service ratio is very low comparatively to other countries. It doesn't mean that we shouldn't try to remain on a fiscal track to reduce that debt and deficit over time, which is the intention. But our fiscal anchor is now the deficit to GDP ratio. So there's been a little bit of a change there. And balancing the operational budget over the next 3 years is another fiscal anchor. And then we've said we want to mobilize $1 trillion in investment. So that's a really significant objective. And I believe that we're well on our way to achieving that.
So let's move into that theme then. We've looked at spending less. Now we're going to talk about investing more. And this is some major projects that the government, the Prime Minister has announced. We're looking at investments in defense. Obviously, we know that we're in a turbulent world, and our NATO commitment is extremely important to Canadians, and we're going to be doing that. There's trade diversification. You've already mentioned that we need to be less reliant and more resilient, and that goes to our trading relationships. You can't do that on nothing. You have to invest in getting those trade doors open, as well as continue with clean energy and critical minerals and AI, all those things. So let's talk a little bit about where you see the key priorities of the government are for investing more.
Yeah, and I mean, you hit on a number of them, Rob, but I think the way we're doing it also with our Buy Canadian strategy, and I know we'll talk more about that, I think is really important. But the Major Projects Office and speeding up, fast tracking essentially approvals through a process that's more streamlined is going to give investors confidence in this country who would otherwise have their capital tied up, committed to a project that might never happen, right? And having many different reviews has traditionally slowed down the process to the degree that many investors wouldn't invest in major projects in their country anymore. And so the reason that C5 and the Major Projects Office has been set up, and the investment that the government is prepared to couple with that initiative is significant. It will get major projects built in this country, but it'll also drive in the private capital to do a lot of the work for us. So in past, our government, I think, in some ways, was more focused on making all of the investments ourselves, rather than stimulating the economy and being kind of catalytic in terms of the economy and drawing in that private investment that's needed in strategic places. So I think if you look at the major investments that we're making, even the defense spending has, a defense sort of industrial strategy component to it, which is really significant in terms of drawing in other forms of capital and having the private sector play a role. And government, again, incentivizing that. It's the same with the clean economy tax credits and, stimulating the, clean energy and clean tech industries in Canada. It's the same with AI. But sometimes, government needs to play a bigger role when it comes to what I would call enabling infrastructure, right? Which, are not necessarily always going to have the revenue model that private investors are going to play ball. So I think there's a real role to play when we're talking about AI and the AI strategy, which is going to be really critical for us as well. And there's quite a bit of activity on that front. We even have a minister that's dedicated to artificial intelligence these days. So it's really great to see, but there's a large focus in making, our government making significant investments in the sovereign compute capacity that's needed to enable an AI ecosystem in Canada. So it's essentially we're making the sort of anchor investments in some of the backbone infrastructure that's going to be needed to enable all of the other private businesses to then be able to grow and prosper and innovate and tie into that infrastructure. Similarly, in critical minerals, which is another major focus, we have quite a number of initiatives that will support the critical minerals that Canada has to offer, which we know are needed and wanted and desired all around the world. Whether it's the Critical Minerals Sovereign Fund or the critical mineral projects that we've invested in that are major projects as part of the climate competitiveness strategy, or the First and Last Mile Fund. All of these aspects, including two different investment tax credits that focus on mineral exploration, both critical minerals and mineral exploration more broadly. And those help to stimulate the exploration of new projects, get them off the ground. There's even changes to the Canada Growth Fund, which our government set up under Justin Trudeau, which is now still active, and so a focus on helping essentially new mining and extraction projects, natural resource projects to get off the ground. Again, we've seen how those tie into the major projects and the trade diversification strategy and the trade diversification corridors fund, which was around before, but now it's being repositioned as a diversification corridors fund. So it's really focused on how do we get products, Canadian products to market, to foreign markets. And so as we know that ministers are developing new and deepening trade relationships and economic ties with desirable allied countries that share some of our values, we are also investing in the infrastructure that's needed to get those products to market. So again, these things tie together, just the major projects alone are already in the ballpark of $160 billion of drawing in private investment. So we're well on our way, as I said before, to reaching that $1 trillion of investment over 5 years goal. Obviously, the other one that's worth mentioning is doubling, I think, our non-U.S. trade by I think it's in the same time period, if I'm not mistaken.
2030. I was just going to bring this home to Don Valley West. I visited a manufacturing company in my riding today, 230 employees, and this is high tech, and it is dual use industry in that there's defense applications, as well as public safety and security applications, as well as other applications for, I'm not going to get into the details of it, but when I asked, what the government could do to help, they said, we need germanium, which is a critical element. It is, and we have it in Canada, and we need to get more of it mined. We need to get more of it processed. It comes with zinc, probably copper zinc deposits. And we have it in Canada. And we need to get the mining companies to extract it safely, obviously in a sustainable way. And I said, so they're not looking for even tax credits for their own industry or tax incentives. They're a going concern. It's a company that began in Canada. It has American ownership for parts of it now, employing people in the riding. And that one critical mineral, that element, is what they need. And so out of today's meeting, after a tour of watching these exceptional individuals in their industry, I will be talking to both the Minister of Natural Resources and the Minister of Industry to say we need to kick this up, and that is one of those realities. One of the comments that came in while we were speaking, and it's a little bit like a snowstorm, where you just dig the car out of a snowstorm and the snow comes again. So we dug ourselves out of COVID, and we're just getting back, individuals, small businesses, large businesses, just getting back, and then the trade war happened. And what I like the way you're framing it, though, is there's some good news in here. It's a challenge to Canadians to exploit, in the best sense of that word, our entrepreneurial spirits. To bring government together with private enterprise and foreign investors. We're not against foreign investment. Obviously, our Prime Minister was in the UAE and United Arab Emirates, and commitments for $70 billion of foreign investment. That's good. We want Canadian investment. Obviously, we want Canadian control of our economy, and we want sovereignty and related to our prosperity. But getting foreign money is also a good thing, and having countries that say, Canada is a good place to invest in. And I think when we do major projects, AI, trade diversification, clean energy, critical minerals, supporting industries. I mean, some industries are hurting. They're in transition. We've heard regularly that most of Canadian trade is still protected from the American tariffs under the CUSMA, under the new NAFTA. But it's threatened. And so we've got a little bit of a moment in time where we need to make some pretty significant changes. And what I also saw in this budget was support for industries and challenged sectors like the automotive industry, the steel and aluminum and softwood lumber industry. We don't have softwood lumber in Toronto or in Whitby, but our whole economy is affected. When one part of the economy hurts, the other doesn't. So I think that gives us a pretty good idea of both the magnitude of major projects. We know that they will still have environmental considerations. Indigenous peoples will be consulted all the way through, and will be responding. I mean, I had another small business last week. I wrote them a letter on behalf of the supporting Canadian industry to the Strategic Response Fund, and we'll keep doing that. Meanwhile, at a very personal level in our riding, we need to build homes, and so the Build Canada Homes program is, I think, win-win. Industry, the business sector is building homes. There's going to be profit there. We're not against profit. We want people to do well. We want union members in each of those trades to do well. And we want Canadians, especially young Canadians, to get homes. So that's another area, I think, of keen investment in both financing arrangements as well as in direct support.
Yeah, I think you're right. Build Canada Homes is another way in which I think we have a really smart approach that takes a slightly different approach to decreasing the cost of home building and working to address all the kind of cost levers within the calculus of developing homes or building homes in Canada, and really trying to stimulate a modern industry for home building that embraces a lot of the innovation that is going on in other parts of the world. That Canada, in some ways, is a little bit behind, but we can catch up. And I think we recognize that panelized construction and modular homes and mass timber and I've even went and visited at a York University. There's a company that's partnered and they're doing 3D printing. They're called Printera, I think Printera. There's 3D printing, which is just remarkable to watch a machine essentially spray a mixture of concrete with such precision that it can literally build 3 floors of a home. And you're just it's remarkable. You've got to go and see it. But this is the type of innovation that when I was out in Edmonton for our National Caucus retreat, we saw um, an organization that had developed robotic technology that could produce panels for homes in a warehouse, ship them to the site, and build entire buildings in 24 to 36 hours, and just incredible. So, I think when we embrace that, we offer flexible financing and support to de-risk some of the private capital. We also take what we're calling a portfolio approach, and then we encourage buying Canadian, and we really work in partnership with municipalities and the private sector and nonprofit providers because they play a key role as well. We can really build housing at scale in this country and grow a more resilient, sustainable economy at the same time.
We're getting some questions, but I want to plow on our themes a bit because you just started touching on Buy Canadian when it comes to housing. Obviously, when the trade war was threatened and began, everyone started looking at labels. I was very clear that I want to support countries that gave favorable trading relationships to Canada. I look for Moroccan oranges. I look for, all those kinds of things that we're doing. But it's moving from a doing our best we can to a very clear obligation to buy Canada. How is that working out? What is the obligation, or how does it relate to those major projects, to our investment, and how does it relate to the one Canadian economy?
Yeah, that's great. Appreciate the question and the opportunity to talk about this because I'm a big supporter of this. I think one thing to highlight before I jump in here is that the federal government's purchasing power is just massive. So we purchase between 20 to 30 billion dollars in a given year in goods and services to the federal government. So if you think about it, we're one of the largest, if not the largest, buyer in the country. So in a way, we have the power to shift markets just in how we procure goods and services. So, and at a time when we're investing significantly and we've created that fiscal room that we talked about, and we're moving from operational spending to capital investment, and the government is stimulating the economy, it's the perfect time. So, in a way, our purchasing power is even greater in moments like that. We can be our own best customer. And I think that message really resonates with me. It resonates with a lot of Canadians, a lot of my constituents, and I'm sure yours as well. And the way that works is, we're embedding commitments to essentially Canadian content within the procurement process. So essentially, contracts with the federal government over a certain amount will get, so it's over $25 million, will essentially get preference or get a higher weighted score within the competitive process that they go through to win contracts with the federal government. They will, if they're incorporating Canadian steel, aluminum, wood products, and other Canadian content, they will naturally get a higher weighted score because we're building in those requirements into those RFP processes. So, and that actually will go down to a lower threshold in the future that will be contracts above $5 million. So in the spring of this year, that threshold will move down. So it started at 25 million and above. It'll go down to 5 million and above, which is a significant change. The other thing is that we launched under when I was PS to Industry Canada, uh, ISI at the time. Uh, it we launched a consultation on how we can ensure that small to medium-sized enterprises could also better compete to win government contracts. Because I ran a small business for years and worked with many other small businesses, and it can be quite challenging to enter into contracts with the federal government and or compete for those contracts with other larger businesses out there in the economy. So it can be very challenging. So what we're trying to do is really make it a lot more friendly to small to medium-sized businesses. There's something called supplier diversity, is something I've done a lot of work on before getting into politics. And there's a lot of benefits to building resilient supply chains when you have small, medium, and large businesses getting government contracts because it builds a sort of a natural diversity within those supply chains where the federal government is not just entering into relationships with or buying from very large companies, but we're actually intentionally trying to enter into more smaller and diversified relationships so that there is not one supplier. Because just think about how that leaves us vulnerable if there's another shock to the economy, and that, like we saw in COVID-19, those areas where we were most dependent upon one supplier were oftentimes the ones that were most disrupted by the trade shocks and supply chain shocks that we experienced post-COVID, during COVID and post-COVID. So we're making progress on this front, and it's quite exciting to see, Rob. And I really think that this is going to have a massive ripple effect across our economy in Canada, and really, I think it's important that we spend public dollars today to get the best value, but also that the value from those contracts, from that purchasing, accrues to the Canadians. And I think that that's what we're attempting to do, and it's very exciting.
It multiplies. We want Canadians to prosper, Canadian businesses to prosper. We want them to pay their income taxes. We will use that money and then continue to prosper. It is a circle that needs to go on. So it's federal procurement, it is policies, it is requirements that we will insist on. People are asking, what can Canadians do besides buying local? Well, we can also invest locally. I mean, so you can buy locally, shop carefully, insist that places you do business with are also buying locally. We're vigilant, and we will check that out, as well as looking at how we invest. And that doesn't mean big investments. I don't have a lot of money to invest, but I want to make sure that my investment dollars, whether it's my TFSA or whatever, are carefully going. We're running out of time, so I want to go into a quick little theme. In my writing, I think in yours too, immigration is an important issue. And while neither of us are Parliamentary Secretary, Minister of Citizenship and Immigration, Immigration, Refugees, and Citizenship, we recognize that we need newcomers to this country. We need them to build the economy, but we also need to help them succeed. And so, as we are, related quite closely to the budget, are also immigration level plans. And that then affects the budget. Someone is asking, how do you show fiscal discipline? Well, in our writing alone, we're looking at, we're able to drop some spending in immigration programs because we're having the levels are lower. A little bit about the impact you think of immigration in this budget.
Yeah, thanks, Rob. Great question. And there's been we've always been a welcoming country, prided ourselves in that. And there's also a sense in which there has been some question that's arisen in many communities across Canada about what the immigration levels should be in order to be sustainable at a time when we've had strains on our housing market and our healthcare systems and et cetera, and our other systems. And so it's about getting the balance right. It's a great balancing act. and very challenging to predict where is labor market demand going to be. And I think that because the government is being so intentional in this budget about investing in strategic industries and areas and supporting tariff impacted industries where it's needed, we also can be intentional and better predict perhaps where there's going to be demand in the labor market, i.e., where there's going to be jobs that can be filled by newcomers to Canada. And I think so we can kind of recalibrate. I think of it as a calibration, which is quite difficult in terms of balancing, to make sure that we have more immigrants come to Canada, less immigrants in total coming into Canada. So there's a significant decline in the number coming per year, but that there's a greater proportion of those that are economic class, so that they're going directly into industries where their skills and talents can be utilized to help grow our economy. So there's a talent attraction strategy and action plan that we launched announced as part of Budget 2025. But we've also decreased the immigration levels, whether it's temporary resident admissions going down 40% compared to the previous year. 65% of all new admissions coming through economic classes, and increasing the province's ability through the provincial nominee program to respond to the local labor market demands in those provinces and territories. So giving them a bit more control and autonomy over identifying those specific labor market needs and allowing them to fill the gaps where they see. So I think, and then maybe the last thing I'll just sneak in there, which I think is important for my constituents and probably yours, our immigration system has seen quite a few delays, and the fact that we're decreasing the numbers allows a focusing of resources again to streamline and get back to service level standards that I think we should really abide by, because we need people that come to Canada to have confidence in our immigration system, just as much as we need all Canadians to look at our immigration system and say, hey, it's working well. People are successfully integrating. They're being productive. They're feeling fulfilled that they're contributing, and that everybody acknowledges that, because the last thing we need is for there to be kind of a backlash and a kind of a divide and class war on this type of issue. I don't want to see that happen in Canada.
Well, absolutely, and I think even just to bring back to the industry visit I did today, it was pretty. As I met dozens of people, many of them would be so-called new Canadians, and these are highly skilled people. Canada needs newcomers, and so there is no doubt that we will have a targeted, important thing. But we need workers, and just look at me. I'm part of the aging population, and we need newcomers. So, part of the trade diversification is new markets where younger people live, like many parts of the world, and so we need customers, we need clients, we need people are going to buy what we sell, and we also need newcomers in Canada. So that's important. Last, we're running out of time, but I do want to just spend a couple of minutes, really bread and butter stuff. I mean, it's great to have big projects. It's great to spend less and invest more. It's great to have the right immigration. It's about affordability. It's about everybody's daily life. I mean, commitment to the dental plan in Canada. This is something we put in. It's there. Commitment to school food programs, making sure that people who have financial challenges, their kids are eating. Making sure that we have $10 day daycare, childcare, which is going to happen. And some of these programs that will ensure that everybody has a chance, and protecting those vital programs. There's austerity in this budget, no doubt about it. That expenditure review that has gone on, I know at Global Affairs where that 15%, I see it, but the cuts I'm seeing us make they're good cuts. they're not the cuts that are going to affect the bread and butter issues of the people that I care about most in this riding, who struggle every month to pay their rent, high rent, incomes aren't high enough. Just a word on that before we get into some closing.
Yeah, thanks, Rob. And I think you're quite right. In fact, I think we've done more federal benefits and helping people access federal benefits. We've protected those core social supports and programs that we pride ourselves on here in Canada, whether it's, and you mentioned a lot of them, the Canada Dental Plan or the National School Food Program, making that permanent. But we've also moved forward with launching the Automated Federal Benefits Initiative, which is really looking to get people who otherwise would not be filing taxes and accessing benefits to which they're entitled, and ensuring that they actually can file easily and access those benefits in the future. So I think that's significant. We're also, obviously, we cut income tax at the lowest tax rate, but for 22 million Canadians, it's a small amount, but it's still not insignificant when you think about a dual income family having another $840 roughly in their pocket on an annual basis, or cutting GST for first-time homebuyers for homes under $1 million, and then reducing it for homes above $1 million and between $1 million and $1.5 million, which is pretty much all of the homes that are being produced in Canada for first-time homebuyers right now. So, I think we are doing things that really help the average Canadian family. And I think that those are significant. But I also think the other thing that really strikes me in this budget, I'm getting a lot of feedback, but the other thing that strikes me in this budget, thanks, Rob, is that the investment budget is going to boost productivity in Canada. Productivity is linked with real wages growing faster than inflation or faster than the cost of living, and it is often cited as the reason that many people would say the standard of living has somewhat stabilized or plateaued in Canada, whereas in some other countries it's continued to rise. We can address that, and we are addressing that in this budget, because if we boost productivity and investment in our economy and it grows, wages grow higher and faster than inflation and faster than the cost of living, which means people will have more money in their pockets at the end of every year. And that's in perpetuity. So it's not just 1 year, it's many years over. So that's why I think this all is a virtuous cycle, and an investment budget that focuses on those productivity challenges in Canada will benefit all Canadians in the future to the tune of thousands of dollars per year of extra income in their pocket over and above their daily or monthly expenses. And that's where I think Canadians really want to see progress. They want those things that immediately benefit them when they need it, but they also want an economy that works for them, and one where they feel like they can kind of get ahead, which ends up being a bit of disposable income at the end of the year to do something that you want to do, right? And I think that that's what most of us consider a good standard of living. So I'll leave it there, but I'm quite excited by the productivity.
Well, this is it. And obviously, there's going to be some pain as our economy changes. Change hurts. And yet what the government, I believe you and I, and our government are committed to, is ensuring that pain is not borne equally, but it's borne on the shoulders of those who can bear it the easiest. And that is what we're trying to do, to ensure that those folks who are struggling to get by, we help. And those small businesses, which create massive numbers of jobs, are sustained. We didn't get into the environment, but it's also there. What I guess people are asking, there's stuff about collaboration, government and private sector. Absolutely. One thing I know about your colleague, the Minister of Finance, François-Philippe Champagne, is he believes in government. There is a role for government. He believes in the private sector. There's a role for the private sector. We want to unleash that spirit of entrepreneurship to make sure we put as few barriers in the way of investment as possible. We target that investment to make sure that it's helping Canada and Canadians, but people should make some money. And we're not shy about that, to say we're a market-driven economy, the market economy a party that we want to make sure that this happens. People want to stay informed. I get that question. Listen, sign up. Send me a note at at Rob Oliphant, rob.oliphant at parl.gc.ca. Easy to find me, too easy. Everyone finds me every day. Send me an email, call our office, get on my update list. Every 2 weeks, we're sending out updates on these things. We like your questions. We like your suggestions. Canadians know best about Canada. And I would say, if someone was asking us what else we can do, well, people are starting to already think about winter holidays and summer holidays. Enjoy the snow. Take some time in Canada over the winter, and this summer, go to national parks. We're extending that program. We're making sure that traveling in Canada is cheaper than it's been before. Visit a province or territory you haven't been in. Bring your family together in Canada. Find a way to enjoy the best of Canadian nature. So, buying Canadian, but also spend your travel dollars in this country. And that helps tourist operators. That helps small businesses coast to coast to coast. And it's also a better holiday. I'm trying to do that all the time. So those are just a few ideas. This is a big budget, and they're big numbers. We've tried to get out of the big numbers. That's all available online. You can look at the big numbers. What we're trying to do is make this real for people, to say, in the end, we're trying to spend less on the operating side and more on the investing side, making investments which will be generational, as we're saying, and have an impact so that we can keep our spending on the programs that we want in Canada, that keep us Canadian. Tough times ahead. That's, I'm not going to sugarcoat it. There are industries and businesses that are going to have a tough time ahead. We're going to be renegotiating that. We're not renegotiating. It will be reviewed. The free trade agreement we have with the United States and Mexico. We have a prime minister and a cabinet that are going to, and a caucus, and I believe even opposition parties on their good days are going to stand up and say, we need, the world needs Canada to succeed. And we have friends around the world. Obviously in Europe, we are developing, we have a free trade agreement with ratified in most European countries. The UK is well underway. The Asia Pacific area, Indo-Pacific, is something we're doing. Visits all the time to Latin America, South America, Central America, Africa. Canada's open for business, and we want investment, and we want customers. And then we will continue. This is a budget that I think is inspirational, is about investment, and is about the future. So, Ryan, for your part in building this budget, thank you. Thank you for the work you do that takes away from some of the folks in Whitby at times when you're traveling the country, making sure that the people in Whitby are well served by a budget. And you need to be on the road to do that. And thank your family for giving your time as well. Closing words to you.
Thanks, Rob. Thanks for having me. Thanks for that. And I think you said it best. I mean, this budget is got big numbers for sure, but I think it really relates to where or connects to where Canadians are at, and that's what we hope and we've used a lot of input, one of the most comprehensive consultations probably in Canadian history, as far as I know, in terms of the engagement process leading up to this budget. And it was great, as you said, to travel Canada I couldn't agree more with your sentiments on that, because I got to travel across Canada doing that consultation work, and boy, what a fantastic country. I got to rediscover and discover areas of the country that I had never gotten to spend time in before. Not to mention hear from really great innovators and stakeholders and partners, all of whom want to build a stronger Canada and believe in this country and are never, ever going to back down from a fight. And, we've got a fight ahead of us, but I think we're up to the challenge. I think this budget rises to the moment. And I know Canadians, whether it's your constituents or mine or any of those stakeholders across the country, they're there along with us. So I'm optimistic despite all the challenges, and I think maybe that's what makes us liberal. But I'm grateful to have joined you tonight, and some of the constituents that have joined in with us. And yeah, I wish you well, Rob, and look forward to seeing you back in Parliament soon.
See you soon. Good night, all. And yeah, let me know if you have any more questions, and I'll get Ryan to give you some answers. Bye.